Hello there. My name is Theodore Mead. I lived in Oviedo for nearly 50 years, from the time I arrived in 1886 until shortly before my passing in 1936. But my story begins, of course, long before that, in 1852, when I was born in Fishkill, New York. As a teenager, at the age of 17, I joined an expedition to Florida, a butterfly discovery and cataloging expedition. We made it as far south as Enterprise, Florida. We did not make it to Oviedo at that time, but I vowed then that someday I would be returning to Florida. Also, as a teenager, I joined another butterfly expedition to the Colorado Rockies with a man named William Henry Edwards, the foremost expert in butterflies in North America at that time. We spent an entire year in Colorado, where I discovered myself 20 new species of butterflies, and to this day 3 of them are named after me. At the age of 22, I went to Cornell University and obtained a degree in civil engineering. And upon graduation, I imposed upon my parents for a grand tour of North America. We took ship from New York to Panama, crossed the isthmus. Remember, there was no canal then. And we took ship from Panama to San Francisco and spent a leisurely 7 months traveling across North America. And I discovered at that trip yet another new species of butterfly, and this time I named it after Miss Edith Edwards, whom I proposed to as soon as we returned from that grand tour across the United States. Edith Edwards was the daughter of William Henry Edwards, who had organized that Rocky Mountain butterfly cataloging trip years before. In 1882, we were married, and Edith and I moved to Florida, but not to Oviedo. Initially, we arrived at Eustis, Florida, taking over a citrus grove where I built a greenhouse, specifically to pursue my new passion, horticulture, and the propagation and commercialization of tropical and subtropical plants. That was my new interest. Unfortunately, the grove at Eustis was not a going concern, and we needed to relocate. That relocation was an easy decision. We came to Oviedo, precisely because Edith's Aunt Mary Edwards had been married to Dr. Henry Foster. Dr. Henry Foster was at that time, in the 1880s, well into the development and encouragement of the town of Oviedo, as well as the area around Lake Charm. We purchased from Dr. Foster 80 acres of orchard around Lake Charm, and to this day, people who are familiar with Oviedo know about Mead Manor and Mead Drive, both named after the 80 acres of orchard that Edith and I purchased from Dr. Foster. That began a 50-year process of my research and my modestly worldwide fame for the development of commercial methods for growing tropical and subtropical plants. And when we arrived in 1880, the primary challenge among worldwide plant propagationists was orchids. I determined at that time to develop methods for propagation and hybridization of orchids which would allow worldwide commercialization. And I was working on those efforts with a man named Henry Neerling in nearby Gotha over by Ocoee. He and I shared not only our research, but an altruistic approach to this effort. Neither of us ever patented any of our findings or methods. We always made it freely available to growers throughout the world upon request, and this went on for the entirety of both our careers. I also made a great deal of progress in propagation and commercialization of other tropical, subtropical plants caladiums, amaryllis, daylilies, and I could go on, but in the end it totaled, as I estimated, roughly thousands of hybrids and methods of propagating those hybrids. There were quite a number of activities that Edith and I enjoyed around the city of Oviedo as well, but that is a matter for another time. A biography of my life in Oviedo has been prepared by Dr. Paul Butler, Orchids and Butterflies. It's available on Amazon. I encourage you to partake of it. In 1936, I found myself unable to continue the work here in Oviedo and relocated briefly to Winter Park. There is also, in Winter Park, in my honor, Mead Garden, which is currently being restored and supported very nicely by the city of Winter Park, and I urge you to visit that as well. Thank you to the Oviedo Historical Society for inviting me back from the great beyond for these few minutes. Pay attention now to yet further historical notes by historical people on behalf of historical people that the Oviedo Historical Society will be sharing with you. Goodbye.